Gluten Tag, guys! Today's video will be on the conventional deadlift. My name is Alex and I'm the brewer. Last week we already looked at the Romanian deadlift and today we'll cover the conventional deadlift. For those of you that didn't see the last video, the deadlift is basically just picking up a non-moving weight from the ground. Deadlifts activate a huge amount of muscle, mainly the whole posterior chain, your forearms and your quads, with the most work being done by your hamstrings, glutes and lower back. There's often a debate about if the deadlift is more back dominant or more leg dominant. In my opinion, the deadlift is more of a leg exercise, but you can definitely debate this. You can modify the deadlift slightly or just focus on certain muscle groups more to make it more leg or more back dominant. In terms of footwear, you should definitely use a flat firm shoe or just no shoes at all. Now let's get to the setup. The bar lays on the floor and you step under it so that the bar is over your midfoot. Your stance width should be shoulder wide or a little narrower, with your toes pointing straight forward or slightly out. And the grip width will be just a little bit wider than your stance width, so that your knees are inside your hands. The correct starting position for deadlift is one that has your knees higher than your ankles, your hips higher than your knees, and your shoulders higher than your hips. A good tip to get in the right starting position is just to stand up, have your hands hang down, and push your hips back without bending the knees until your hands are at your knees, and then also bending at the knees until you get to the bar. Another way of getting into the right starting position is, if you have already learned the Romanian deadlift, just bending your knees until you get to the ground from the lowest position of the Romanian deadlift. During the whole deadlift, you should make sure that you have a neutral back and also that your scapula is retracted. Before we start the deadlift, like always, we breathe in and brace our core and then get into the right starting position. And now you just start the movement by pushing into the floor and then pushing your hips forward. Although we have knee and hip extension in the deadlift, usually it tends to be that in the lower portion we have a little more knee extension and in the upper portion you have a little more hip extension. So if it helps you, you can imagine yourself at the beginning mainly extending your leg and in the top portion mainly pushing your hips forward. The bar should always be over your midfoot and move in a straight line. To help you with this, you can imagine yourself pulling to yourself with straight arms. Once again, make sure to keep the back neutral and also to keep your hands straight. You have reached the upper position once your knees and hips are fully locked out, your hips are pushing against the bar and your shoulders are over your hips. You can now start the downwards motion by pushing your hips back and then once again bending at the knees until you hit the floor. I would advise you to let the bar rest on the floor on every rep for a split second and not just to hit the floor and bounce back up again. Now let's quickly cover different grip variations. There is the normal double overhand grip, the mixed grip, the hook grip, and using straps. If you're just getting started with the deadlift, I would advise you to use the double overhand grip, mainly because it also trains your grip and the weights you use on the deadlift are usually still manageable. If the weights get heavier, you can either use a mixed grip, a hook grip, or straps. Many people really like the mixed grip. I myself don't like it that much because it just puts the biceps in a lot of danger if you do it a little incorrect. The hook grip is great, but you need a lot of time to get used to it, and for most people that's probably not worth it. So if the weight gets too heavy, I would just use straps, because you don't need to alter your technique all that much, and also it's very safe. But keep in mind that you will not be training your grip all that much this way. That was the technique. Now let's get into a few common mistakes and then into some tips. The first 4 common mistakes of the deadlift are basically the same we already had in the Romanian deadlift, and these were rounding your back and making a cat back, letting the bar drift in front of you, doing a weird half squat thing, and overarching your back at the lockout. With the correct starting position, you greatly lower the risk of making mistakes 2 and 3. And the 5th common mistake for deadlift is doing touch and go deadlifts, where you just bounce the weight on the floor. And the problem with this is that every repetition will look slightly different and you are inconsistent. And this way the technique might get worse with every rep. Now let's get into the tips. And tip 1 is work on your breathing and bracing, and also where you should breathe and brace. And there's no real correct answer where you should breathe and brace. Some people breathe in, brace, and then bend down, pick up the bar and lift it off. And others get into the right starting position and then breathe and brace. In the beginning, I would advise you to do the second thing and get into the right starting position first, and then breathe and brace in and lift the bar off. If you're doing more than just one rep, you can also breathe and brace at the top of the movement before you do the next rep. but in the beginning I would advise you to breathe and brace in the lower position of the deadlift. Tip 2 is pulling yourself between the bar and the floor and pulling the slack out of the bar. If you're using light loads, maybe the bar will already come off the ground this way. But when you watch someone deadlift a lot of weight and they pull the slack out of the bar, you can really see the bar bending. And by wedging ourselves between the bar and the floor and pulling the slack out of the bar, you're in a great starting position and already under tension and ready to explode up. Tip 3 is when starting the exercise, not thinking of yourself pushing into the floor, but thinking of yourself pushing the whole world away from you. And tip 4 is when pushing your hips forward, not just pushing them forward, but really pushing them against the bar. You can also imagine yourself having a nut between your butt cheeks and trying to crack the nut open. That was all for the video. As always, I hope you liked it, and if you did, please leave me a like and subscribe. Also write some comments for the algorithm. You're also very welcome to leave me some criticism in the comments. This was Fahad. Thanks for watching. Having a nut between your butt cheeks and trying to pinch this nut.